Welcome to the Analytics Power Hour. Analytics topics covered conversationally and sometimes with explicit language.
Hi everybody, welcome. It's the Analytics Power Hour. This is episode 255. There's a quote that says, "If opportunity doesn't knock, build a door." Analytics careers have lots of opportunities, and thinking about your path and being intentional about curating your career journey is really important. And as you go through your career, there are inflection points along the way. We all face them. Sometimes they require big risks, and other times they just require saying yes or no to the right thing. We did a listener survey, and we got a series of questions from our listeners on this topic. And so I think it makes a ton of sense for us to jump in and explore this topic in more detail. And as always, I just want to give a huge thank you to our listeners that sent these questions in as part of the survey responses. So my name is Michael Helbling. And now I want to introduce you to my co-hosts. Mo Kiss, welcome.
Hello. Nice to be here.
Pretty exciting. We're recording this show remotely, but on the same continent. So that's pretty awesome.
It's a first.
Julie Hoyer, welcome.
Hello.
It's awesome. Val Kroll, welcome.
Hey party people.
And Tim Wilson, welcome.
Oh, there was a welcome. There was a little pregnant pause there.
I thought about it, and then I was like, I better just be nice, because it'll probably get bad later.
That's right. It'll be the off air. Yeah, we know what it's like off mic. Yeah.
No, but I think so. This is awesome, because I feel like this is such a great group of people to answer some of these questions, because we have such a range of different experiences in our careers. And so let's just dive into it. Let me pull up the first question from our listener survey. So this is somebody who said, "I'm a software developer with strong SQL, but I have very little stats background, and I'm about to be named an analytics lead for a large team. What should I learn first?" That's a good question.
I actually do have experience of having a manager who was an engineer. So like back-end engineer, and there was definitely a steep learning curve that we had to go through. I think it also kind of depends. When you say analytics lead, are they like technical lead or are they manager lead? Because the answer is very different.
So it sounds like probably they're going to be managing a fairly large team as they step into that new role.
Yeah, let's go with they have both. Maybe it's even organized that way. No? You're saying it wouldn't happen? They'd report into different areas? You're like, first, learn a better org structure.
No, I'm just like, it's going to make the answer about 40 minutes long.
Well, better get started, Mo.
I would say like the strong SQL, like there's got to be some level of figuring out how to be you probably have a strong bias towards solving the engineering problem. How do I get the data? Where do I get it? What are the caveats? Mm-hmm. And there's going to be a big need to sort of resist that impulse. Like I assume you probably have other people who will have that impulse in spades, and the need to build relationships and ignoring the data and just figuring out what problems the business is expecting you to solve and whether they're solvable or not. That would be that's like, what do you need to learn? It's like, probably it's unlearn. I mean, those skills are needed. I'm not saying
like,
you need it.
How should you spend your time? And I think the thing is, when someone from engineering comes into the data world, they have a pretty good like model of how data flows from one place to another. Like they get the kind of architecture pretty easily, I think, because they've normally worked on problems that solve that. But the bit that's actually really complicated is like really understanding that niche role that data plays in being a business partner, answering really complicated questions, sometimes with high levels of uncertainty, and like still being able to progress things forward for the team. It's all the soft skills.
Yeah. And I would say the question specifically said strong SQL, but very little stats background. And so one thing to just call out is to keep in mind that you don't need to know how everyone does their job on your team to be a good manager or leader for those people. I think it's a lot of what Mo and Tim were just saying about connecting to the right business problems and understanding what the business expectations are, soft skills, building relationship with your team. I think don't have this urge to like, oh, I need to learn all the details, because that's going to, first of all, lead you down a path of micromanagement, and also keeping your eye not on the ball of the new responsibilities you're taking on in this new lead position and role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I'm sure this is part of the normal stepping into a role like this, but if you were to actually go and talk to everyone on your team, especially people maybe on the side where they're using the data after you've, worked with it, set it up, whatever, you may be surprised to find out what they feel like they need in their role, or you could even just be asking them, what is your day-to-day? If you don't know, I think that would help you start to get into that phase 2 of figuring out, like, how do you best help unlock their, day-to-day stuff, or what are their big pain points, or do they feel like they don't know enough about the technical side, and maybe you're able to step in and just help even the team communicate better, because to Val's point, you don't need to necessarily know all the stats, but if the people on your team are able to better collaborate, that might be a good starting point.
Actually, Julie, that's a really good point of like, you need to figure out who knows what on your team so that when you have a question on experimentation or a task, like who is the best person who knows the most about that and who's potentially going to be able to upskill junior people that know less. Like, I totally +1 Val's comment. You do not need to know how to do everyone in your team's job, but you need to know who to ask when that problem comes up. And so it could also be like, not what do you need to learn from a technical perspective, but what do you need to learn about your team?
But I'll kind of take a slightly different, because Val, as you pointed out, they said the very little stats background, and I wouldn't want to over-index towards, I have people who know stats, I don't need to learn stats, and this will be probably the soapbox being mounted, but the SQL piece is very deterministic. Like, did I query the data? Did I get it? I think there's the understanding of statistics, not necessarily being able to, do a linear regression or an ANOVA or whatever it is. But I think there's something to get comfortable with what the data can't tell you, the world of uncertainty and maybe a light introduction to causal inference. If you find people on your team who have a statistics or a data science background, they may be a good resource to leverage. But because my concern is that you would go, the danger moving in that direction is that you talk to the business and then you start steering yourself towards problems that can be deterministically answered, which there may need to be some level of education. Here's the business problem. What can we do, to run an experiment? If you're doing SQL, you're probably not thinking experiments, even though experiments may be the best way to address some problems.
I do think you would learn enough about that in the course of your role. I just wouldn't say that that's the top priority or even in the top 5. I'm like, you will learn about experimentation through the course of your job. That's inevitable because you will have conversations with the team about what's possible or not possible on a task.
Sure. I would just say that it's just, don't underplay how important of a responsibility it is to be able to advocate for your team when you're in a room that they're not, because now you're a lead. So you're going to be pulled into conversations that you might not have been before. And someone's going to turn to you and say like, well, what can we do with this? And so you're going to be able to speak to it where you're not writing checks that your team is pissed that they have to cash, or they're going to be like, oh, I could have done something really cool, but now I have to walk into this conversation immediately disappointing those business partners because I'm not able to pull this, rabbit out of a hat. So I would say that I agree with you, Mo, that there's like a lot of things that we can prioritize before like, taking a Coursera course, that there is a lot that's going to be on the job, but don't underestimate how important it is to be able to like speak to the capabilities and the way that your team can be most valuably serving the organization.
It's time to step away from the show for a quick word about Piwik Pro. Tim, tell us about it.
Well, Piwik Pro has really exploded in popularity and keeps adding new functionality.
They sure have. They've got an easy-to-use interface, a full set of features with capabilities like custom reports, enhanced e-commerce tracking, and a customer data platform.
We love running Piwik Pro's free plan on the podcast website, but they also have a paid plan that adds scale and some additional features.
Yeah, head over to piwik.pro and check them out for yourself. You can get started with their free plan. That's piwik.pro. And now let's get back to the show.
All right, great coverage of that question. Let's jump over to a new one. So this person asks, I'm currently out of the workforce. What can I do to maintain or grow my skills?
Coursera. I mean, I see if you're out of the workforce, like it seems like it would start with figuring out what you want to do when you re-enter the workforce. I've talked to some people now who are out of the workforce, and there's a tendency to, if they're looking to get back in the workforce, they're like, I got to add skills to my resume, and they're trying to find the things that they can get certified on so that they can bolster their resume, which easy for me to say. That feels a little dangerous because it's not grounded in what was it that as I re-enter that I most want to be doing.
Yeah, Tim, maybe you spent a long time out of the workforce before you started Facts and Feelings, so
didn't learn shit.
No.
I think the thing as well is don't underestimate your network.
Totally. 100%.
I actually was chatting to someone recently who, through no fault of their own, has been out of work for a little while, and they decided to take a couple months off, relax, that sort of thing. Then was like, then I'll find another job. And the reality was the market is not what it used to be. It is actually really hard. And they're finding it quite a struggle. And the biggest reflection he had was in that period of time off, I didn't put time into my network. And that's actually so valuable. So like, I don't know, I get a lot of resumes with people who have just done 50,000 Coursera courses and thinks that makes them super qualified to do the job. And like, sure, it can add skills, not disputing that. But the reality is, if I was out of the industry for a bit, I would probably still keep going to meetups. I would still keep having coffees with people, which is actually what I did when I was out of work, like keep my network alive. And I would also keep listening to podcasts, because I feel like meetups and podcasts are a very good way of staying across changes to then know what things you need to learn to fill that skills gap. So I don't know. Maybe I would have a very different perspective on what to do.
Well, but this wasn't, I mean, I wasn't reading this question as saying, what should I do to find a job to re-enter? It was, they're specifically saying they want to
keep their skills up.
I mean, I don't disagree. I also think it's one of those things that's like, don't wait until you're out of a job to decide to start networking.
Yeah. But in that vein, I do think there's many non-for-profits and even like local mom and pop businesses that have zero analytics capabilities, zero access to those skills, and would be great places to contribute. And especially if it's things that you already care about or you're interested in, it's a great connection to make. I know that is a place where I've spent some time doing some small things for different groups, and it's both personally rewarding as well as you get to answer some questions and work through some problems with teams and sort of burnish those skills. And honestly, I think, if you are planning to re-enter the workforce or get back in the workforce, it looks good on your resume that you're doing things like that and contributing like that.
Well, it's great for a behavioral interviewing question when you're like, oh yeah, by the way, I help feed 10,000 kids by doing a little database work, or something.
It does depend though on the reason they're out of work.
Sure.
And the reason that I say that is I can imagine a person asking this question if they're on parental leave. And I think sometimes when you're on parental leave, you have this like expectation of yourself that you're going to be able to do all this learning and volunteer. Like I volunteered to do a project on some equitability data on my first parental leave. Do you think I did any of that? No, not a single thing.
As I recall, you went from you were missing it. So you're like, I'm trying to let them do it. And then they're like, sure, have at it. And you're like, what the fuck was I thinking? I don't know.
Yes, I was like, no, I do not have the... I don't have
It wasn't
the
so much the time. It was more the energy and the mental capacity, right? I mean, it's like...
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I do think you need to be careful.
I actually did do a lot of data work when I was on parental leave about timestamp since the last time my kid pooped, ate, slept.
Yeah. That data collection,
Did a lot of data collection. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. I'm with you.
That's actually not a bad idea. Personal data, like,
there you go.
Doing things with your own data is kind of interesting.
I mean, I didn't do anything with it. I just collected it. Because again, I overestimated that I would have time to do that, and then
you collected it just in case. You're like, just in case you needed it.
Ooh, Matt Gershoff burn.
Yeah, yeah,
that's right.
You know what? I have a really nice 1-year summary though that I was like, wow, I feel really accomplished. All the things I did collect just for that little pat on the back. I was like, worth it.
The decision making at the margins that did not happen.
Yeah. You know what? Or when you're just sleep deprived, and you're like, when's the last time they did X, Y, or Z? And you're like, oh, let me go to my app.
By the time you have your fourth kid, you're going to be like, you know what? I might want to do a comparison across all of the children. It could happen,
Yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
4 kids? Who has time for that?
And we don't mean to assume that the asker of this question was someone who's on parental leave or not.
It's a good example for Mo to stretch us to think it's not just about some of the...
Yeah.
That's good.
No, I like it. All right. Next up, I'm mid-career and pivoting into analytics. What skills do I need to focus on most?
Ooh.
Yeah.
No, I think SQL's number one.
I mean, a lot of this depends on where you're coming from.
Yeah.
Because there's some real complementary career paths that flow into analytics really nicely. So like people from finance or things like that. And so depending on where you're coming from, might do that. I think SQL's a great answer. Less so R, but I get where you're coming from, Tim. But I think the thing that I've observed about people who make those transitions is how can you leverage where you're coming from into where you're going? And so in other words, you've learned a lot of very, very valuable skills, and actually creating a lateral bridge of leveraging those skills into your analytics career is actually a huge resource for you that you might not realize. And so that's what I'd first encourage you to do, is just think a lot about and meet with people who are in the analytics field you're looking to get into, and collaborate on thinking like, what skills have I learned that serve me well? And then use that to build out a skill map of like, okay, now here's where I've got things I need to learn versus where things I've learned, now I can translate those over. And I think that'll really help you realize that maybe you're not as far off from this career switch as you thought.
I would say too, communication skills as an analyst. Like I run into a lot where people aren't even thinking of like, how are you going to make sure you document the process of pulling the data to answer the question? Or did you even document the question being asked? It's like some of that more hidden part of the process. But I do feel like as an analyst, like you have to own that you have things. Like you have a clear process, you have documentation, you can go back to it, you can communicate what you did, you can communicate the assumptions you made, or like based on the question being asked, did you take a pivot on the question halfway through and you didn't realize it? I think there's a lot of those quote unquote softer skills or like more hidden skills. But because when you get to the point of having to communicate the work you did and like present back to people, I feel like I spend a lot of time coaching people in that area. And I don't know, depending on, like you said, Michael, depending on where you're coming from, if that wasn't a normal part of your role, like it does take a lot to be able to make a deck, a short one to like give a readout from. How much are you going to share? What kind of data visualizations are you going to use? Like there are some basic tools you need, I feel like, to be an analyst that can function well with your stakeholders.
They're the skills that you're not really going to understand why they're so critical until they bite you in the ass a couple times, like the documenting your process, documenting your assumptions, writing out a plan, that sort of thing. And then I think there are skills that are relatively straightforward that I think are critical because, Julie, as you were saying, communicating. I mean, I know I have a little axe to grind about data visualization, putting that even separate from data storytelling. Like you can read one book, you can read Cole Knaflick or Alberto Cairo or Stephen Few, read one book and it will like change the way you're thinking. Now, Michael, to your point, if they're already somewhere where they're like, no, I'm already doing this stuff all the time and I already know these principles. If you don't know some principles of data visualization, then I would think that because it's kind of quick, it gets you to a base level very, very quickly, is one of those things. The other part is going to be like very situational. Like, well, if you're pivoting into analytics and you have a role, then you need to also include in your sort of skill map of like, what's most needed here. I need to talk to my peers and talk to others and figure out which are like the biggest gaps that I can fill with some education, which are things that are going to take a little longer, but I should be riding along to do them. If it's, I'm just going to pivot generally into analytics and it's very, very broadly defined, that's really, really hard. Like I look at the analytics subreddit where sometimes people are like, what the hell just, I got this job. I thought I was going to be doing X instead I'm doing Y. Is this normal? And it's like, no, buddy, it's not normal. Like nothing's normal. Everybody hits that in some way. Like if you're expecting some tight little list of this is the definition of what this role is. It's not. You can't learn it all. You can't learn it all now. So you're going to have to find a way to focus.
Yeah, definitely read a data visualization book and then realize every reporting tool you interact with isn't going to let you do the thing you want.
And then learn R, to Tim's point, right?
Yeah, because then you can.
Yeah. Maybe to focus on the business you're going into, because maybe you have a lot of context moving into analytics, but if you don't, like you're making a jump and it's a new business, I would say focus on learning the business process, what they care about, because that context will help you decide what you actually have to learn about the analytics, like execution part, but you can stay grounded more in what's going to matter instead of getting sidetracked.
Yeah. And I think that's the only other thing I had in my head besides some of the awesome tips you guys had to share is to think about some of the nuances of where you practice analytics and understand what you might gravitate more naturally towards, like based on some of your strengths or the things that you've enjoyed in past roles, because it can look very different depending on where you're at, if it's consulting or in-house, just as, lots of different flavors.
And last bonus tip, learn what a McKinsey headline is or an Insights headline.
Yeah.
Like whether you're using it in an email as like paragraph titles, whether you're using it in a presentation, whether you're using it as like the headline for like a write-up you're doing, learn what they are. Like your life will be phenomenally easier and people will understand what you're saying or what the team are saying. It is hands down one of the most important skills, I think. And it's like a little bonus one that most people don't think about.
It's bonkers. So if you search for, and I'm not doing it right now, the last time was a couple years ago, where I'm like, surely if I search for McKinsey title, there'll be like a million posts, and like there aren't. But it's like, this is so simple. So if you search and you're not finding it,
Really?
It's literally, it's crazy. It's like buried in little niche places where.
Maybe I should write a blog on it. Another thing on my to-do list I won't do.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody doesn't know what it is and they're like, well, tell me what it is. It's making it a declarative statement. Like make your title, don't put, results from last quarter. Make it a declarative statement at the beginning of a paragraph, at the top of a slide. Once you start doing it, you can't unsee how ineffective it is when people don't do it.
And you feel it right away in terms of impact. I'm sitting here thinking, can generative AI make these for me? I don't know.
Yeah.
Probably not very good ones, but.
And if you struggle to make one, then maybe you don't have a point.
That's actually interesting too, Michael, on the AI, because if you just had a slide with the data visualization, it kind of proves the point of like, what would anyone else take away from the data? Like you're supposed to use the McKinsey title to tell them what to focus on. And like the slide is there for them to validate your title. So it would be funny to say, this is what I would say, and then show it to AI and be like, what the heck would they say from this slide? Because it might be really different.
Oh, it's like a quality
Although
check
there could be a
here.
feedback loop where you keep refining your visualization and the way that you present it until the AI actually says it. Then you've got
Torture it.
reinforcement. Yeah. It's been a while since we've said McKinsey titles on here. That's a good one. Love that.
I think we gave more than they bargained for on that one. So it's good.
Yeah.
What skills?
Like with
Just
the
learn
pivot.
one. Just learn this one thing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Probably pivot tables. Learn pivot tables. All right. Next up. I've been a data analyst, but now I'm trying to move into data science. How can I best do that? My advice, don't. No, I'm just kidding.
I wish I could follow up and ask them what is drawing them to data science. And how are they describing these two roles?
The pay differential.
Ay.
I mean, that was absolutely me 7 or 8 years ago, because I thought the industry was going that way. Now I feel like data science is it's gotten so liberally spread out to anyone in any kind of role that is mildly technical. I don't know, Mo, do you feel like the data science role at Canva is reasonably tightly defined? No. Okay.
No. And it actually is a huge problem because we actually were all called data analysts and we also had business intelligence analysts, and we made the decision to call everyone data scientists. And one of the things that happens through like the performance review cycle is there is an upweighting of people, say, that build tooling or work on experimentation or create models, that sort of thing. And one of the things that has actually come up that's kind of a conflict is we have some very incredible people who answer the most complicated business questions out there. But it is what you would describe as like a typical data analyst role. And sometimes like it doesn't fit because our definition of data science is not actually representative of the skills we have. And so it's a point of tension that we're trying to work through at the moment of like, how do we accurately reflect what very good performance is when your skills are more on like the business acumen or commercial side than they are on the like hardcore data science side?
I mean, certainly from an analyst perspective, shifting in toward data science, obviously you need to pick up and learn a programming language of a couple of kinds, probably Python, maybe R, maybe both, because those are going to be critical. But I think, I mean, to your point, Mo, like there's not seem to be like the only thing I see a lot of times in organizations where there's a sort of distinction between here's our analytics team and here's our data science team is the data science team is typically working on broader longevity types of business questions, whereas the analytics team is working on more short-term, more like observational and or day-to-day business questions. And I don't know if I agree, like I don't personally think that's a great way to organize around data and analytics necessarily. So in a certain sense, like I struggle with the fundamental underpinning of where that lives, because as analysts, we should be looking to tackle all along that and building our skill sets up to go into things like complex experimentation and segmentation and cohorts and those kinds of things. And you build your skills up. And at some point you tip over into becoming a data scientist instead of an analyst. I don't know. Somebody probably has an answer to that question, but I feel like the frontier is pretty vague.
I will agree with Tim that like 5-7 years ago that it did feel like the way to like future proof ourselves to make sure that like, we stayed relevant, we stayed on top of our skills. But I will say that what I personally have noticed a lot more of as a way to future proof yourself is to broaden your definition of the analytics that you work with or the data sets that you'll touch. And so you're able to answer more complex business questions if you're more rooted in the data that runs your business. And so I also agree with Julie that I wish we understood a little bit of that inspiration because, you know, hey, fair point. Like if you really want that pay bump, pay increase, like different things motivate different people. But it does seem like, especially if you're in-house, that there would be a way to like weasel your way into certain projects that have some of these skills required or some of the projects that the data science team is working on. And I think there was like a couple of episodes that we've done in the past that we can link in the show notes that have some great examples of ways that you can start to build the skills or to gain those experiences that really excite you. Because again, if you're drawn to or pulling yourself in the direction of the things that you're most interested in about the data science world, that's what's going to make it the easiest, most fun, the most rewarding, the most engaging.
Well, that is reminding me, and Robert Petkovic listens to this, he will reset his timer on reminding me of this phase in my life for another 4 years. But I went from like, oh, I'm going to become a data scientist, pretty quickly said, well, maybe I'm just going to be more data science-y was kind of my shorthand. Because I was figuring out in a semi-public way, like, what does this mean? And I think ultimately where I landed was I'm expanding my perspective and skills as an analyst. Like, absolutely thrilled that I learned R. If I went back to previous me, maybe I would have tackled Python instead. Can I, without even looking at documentation, run even a simple linear regression in R? No. So I use it for all sorts of stuff that's useful. Same thing with Python. I've gotten to where I can kind of scan it and read it. I would consider myself still very much an analyst. The things I've picked up along the way are a better understanding of some of the deeper principles and capabilities and ways of working. But I think I gave up pretty early on of like trying to reach, but that makes it sound like it is a progression. So I don't know that you just sort of tip over into being a data scientist. I think Cassie Kozyrkov would say, you know, she doesn't say data scientist. So she's like the analyst and the statistician or the analyst and the decision scientist. And it's along the lines, I think, Michael, where you were, was the analyst is a little quicker hit. They're finding things, they're doing explorations. They may be doing a linear regression. They may be doing regression. They may be doing other things to say, is there something here? the statistician says, okay, now we're going to put the real rigor on it. It could be we're building a model that's going to be productionized. That's often a data science role. It could also be, no, we're going to build a model. We're going to appropriately split the data set into a training and a testing thing. You get one shot at it. So there is a higher level of the question being answered. You have fewer shots. There's more rigor. It takes a little more effort, but you are trying to get to something that you can really move forward with. Whereas I think she looks at it as the analysts a lot of times are kind of inspiration for those smaller things that are the select number of things that then bubble up.
Yeah.
It's funny, when we came to this question, the first person I thought of was Cassie, but not because of her definition split. It actually comes down to her, like, just be useful thing.
Yeah.
Which definitely comes top of mind. And I guess one of the things I think you really need to think about is your motivation. I feel like there are too many people that are like, I want to do data science stuff because I want to do the cool, sexy, fun stuff. Like, I've had people literally come to me and be like, I don't want to do the like 10% boring bit. I just want my job to be all of the fun, sexy stuff. And I'm like, that's not realistic. Like, that is not a thing. And so I think you just need to make sure that it's not like you're chasing the shiny thing. It's like, if you were genuinely more interested in that work, that's cool. Like, that's not a problem. But like, you really need to interrogate your why of why you want to make that move.
Can I just say a little tactical too? Like, depending on what data science and data analysts mean in your organization, like, try to partner and work with a data scientist. I know I get to do that at my company. And so the way we interact, I'm able to bring some context maybe, but I'm also able to learn from them, like the rigor of the different methodologies, and tell them, like, here's the business problem, you know, here's what I'm really trying to focus in on. Here's maybe what I hypothesize is happening. To best answer this though, like, I was thinking maybe I use, you know, this type of regression or whatever it may be. And then I can have a conversation with them where they are bringing in that deeper knowledge of what are the tools we could use here. So maybe even just thinking, can you do that to help you in your transition? Because those are the people, if you're wanting to stay in that organization, like, they're going to highlight to you where you have the skill gaps too to focus in on. And then to Mo's point, like, you can decide, is this really what I want my role to look like and grow into? So the shadowing or like partnering would be my biggest tip.
Yeah. I'd also throw out there that I feel like data science as a profession is more impacted by economic cycles than an analyst typically is. And so you'll find potentially in the job market more or less opportunities depending on sort of where the economy is going and the cycle of the economy. Certainly a lot of people I've talked to in the last year and a half who've been looking for data science roles have definitely noticed some shift in the uncertainty in the marketplace has caused companies to pull back on data science hiring a little bit. And it kind of goes to some of what we've been talking about. You know, when a company is more uncertain, they take shorter swings at bigger deals. And so they're pulling their risk perspective back. And so the big analysis or segmentation or pricing strategy, the long-term project they might have taken on before, they'll now put on hold. Whereas they still need to run the business day to day, find opportunities and do the analysis around those things. So you might find that as well. And so that's the other thing. If you're not finding opportunities in the job market to transition into data science roles, it may require some patience. It's not you. It might just be the cycle of the economy that we're in. So hopefully somewhat encouraging. Don't feel bad if it's sort of like, man, I've been trying to be a data scientist and no one will hire me. It might not be you. All right, great. Let's jump into a new question. So this is actually one where we've actually done some topics around this, but I think it's ever present. And so let's jump into it. I'm at a point where I need to choose whether to pivot from being an individual contributor to a management role. What should I do?
That's the listener question. You're not asking.
Yeah, that's the listener question. Yeah.
No, that's Schmeichel Schmelbling.
That's right. Pay no attention to who asked the question. Just answer it, Tim. For gosh sake.
Sorry. Is the question, what should I do? Should I pivot to being a manager? Or is the question...
I think it's whether or not.
Yeah.
Oh.
Should I?
Yeah.
At a point where I have to choose.
I mean, I don't think we're going to get to a good answer, dear listener, about what you should do.
No, I actually think we can.
Oh.
You know what that means, Michael?
Let's do
You're
it.
an IC material. Mo is management material.
Oh, well, that goes without saying. I absolutely agree
I
with
think
that.
it comes down to, like, do you want to be the one doing the work? Or the thing actually that is probably the biggest determiner for me, I was interviewing someone a couple of weeks back, and I said to them, like, because it's a person who actually is an IC at the moment, and we were considering them for like what we call a coach's role or a manager role. And I was like, what's made you want to go back? And he's like, I actually just love developing people. I love coaching a team. I love helping them achieve like their goals, work through problems. Like, yes, I'm an amazing IC, but that's not the thing that excites me the most. So I think it actually comes down to like, what excites you the most? Is it the doing the analysis and like giving the business the answer and having less meetings and being in the weeds and knowing the data really well? Or is the bit that really excites you the like helping a junior person learn how to do their first presentation or explain a technical methodology really well to a stakeholder? Or like, I mean, obviously management also comes with all of the stakeholder stuff, which is a whole nother separate thing. But I think you need to figure out which bit you're most passionate about. And I'm obviously very passionate about the team stuff, much more than I am about the doing the work myself, although sometimes I still get kind of sucked back in because like it is a bit of a high, right? Like we wouldn't work in data if we didn't love that high of like, oh, look at this amazing analysis. But like the reality also is if you're a person who... Someone once said to me, they're like, oh, they were in their first management role. They're like, this feels like a lot of politics. And I'm like, it's not politics. It's about figuring out the best way to communicate something that you help the company make the best decision possible with the information that you have. That might feel political to you, but that's not how I describe it. So if you don't have the stomach for that, also probably not a manager type person.
People who note politics, I'm like, they're either very cynical and they need to adjust their perspective, which I think you just did a great way to kind of reframe that. It's possible they're at a company that actually has, if it's that dysfunctional, I mean, not that there isn't some level of some aspect of gamesmanship, but if that's your framing, like whether it is politics or whether you're perceiving it as politics, yeah, you're not going to work out well in either one, because I don't think you want to work long-term unless you are a direct descendant of Machiavelli. I think it's really tough. Like I know now deeply and have known for years that I am an IC for life. Doesn't mean I don't like collaborating with people. Doesn't mean I don't like coaching and providing some support and guidance, but I don't know that I would know that as deeply as I do if I had not been in a management role. So I could see, I don't know that I've seen this happen. I don't think you really know until you try it. So if there's an opportunity to say, put me in a role that is somewhat supervisory or managerially, but I am going to put a 12-month timeline on it, and somebody is going to hold us accountable to have a discussion about whether I want to continue with this or whether I want to go kind of back IC. Because there are people who a year in, they're like, this is amazing. I know I will be satisfied for the next decade of my career because I'm getting so much energy from this. And there will be people who say, I'm waking up every day and spending the first 7 hours of my day getting to the last hour when I can go and actually just do some work that I'm really excited about. But I think it's hard to know. So the extent that you can like try it out in a way that you don't feel like, I mean, you're never committing. You're never like, oh, if I go down this track, there's no going back. Because it's not a going back. It's, taking a step over to the lateral path of continuing as an IC.
And I have 2 people on my team that just did that were leading teams. And then we've had a conversation and they've gone back to both being senior ICs. And they're absolutely killing it.
I also think that just because you tried at one place, like also keep in mind the context, like you might be in a position to give it a try later because maybe there's something about that context that makes it unappetizing, but don't close it forever. Because I totally agree with Tim. You're not pouring concrete, whether you switch roles at your current company or switch to a different organization, it's all fluid. But the one thing I will say, you never know until you try it. But Mo, I thought you made a really good point when you were saying, Do you really like explaining things to stakeholders that's really complex, or training or coaching analysts? So you think like, oh, I've never been a manager before, but think about some of the elements that would become more central to your role, because it's likely that you've actually dabbled in it. Like maybe you had an intern working for you last summer. Like, did you enjoy that experience? And did you enjoy when they saw success and some of those things to give you like that little inkling? But the one thing that I will say that I hear a lot when this like divergent path conversation comes up is the only way to move up is if I manage a team. And I will say that at least in the past couple of years, I feel like so many organizations have given a more senior path to success on the IC side. So if you've hit a ceiling at your current organization and you really feel pulled to that IC side, maybe it is time to look outside your organization, because there is absolutely a path, staying IC, where you can move up in seniority and your scope and the type of decisions that you can be helping influence within the business. So just want to make sure that that gets out there too.
That's a great point.
+1, move companies if there's no path to seniority in IC. Because like we have an IC track and a coaching track, and like you can get the same pay or the same like benefits of being a senior person, and your complexity definitely grows with that as well, or the problems that you're solving. But yeah, like then if that's the route that you want to take, move to a company that will have a path for you as an IC.
That's right. Canva.com/jobs.
/MoKiss referral code.
Yeah.
It's also, I think, really important. I think we've sort of touched on it, to just recognize the complete difference in skill sets required, right? So managing your own efforts versus starting to take on and managing the efforts of others. So if you transition into a management role, you should expect a lot of learning and building of skills, which is by its nature confusing, disorienting, and frustrating. And so I think that's the other thing, is give yourself time to grow as a leader, as a manager, if you take that on, and don't necessarily say, oh, in my first year, it was rough, I felt disoriented, throw it away. It could be that as you kind of evaluate both kind of your personal skill sets, desires, those kinds of things, of your personality, also factor in. It may take you a couple of years to really start to build the skill sets necessary to do that. A lot of times when I've led teams, I'll say managing people is not for everyone. And you should work really hard. You deserve it, and your people deserve great leaders. And so don't just jump into a management role if you know that it's not right for you, or you don't actually want to do it. You'll hate it. Your people won't be benefiting from it. And so nobody benefits. And so it's tricky, but also if you do decide to go into management, make sure to give yourself time to grow in and learn the skills, because it's nothing like what you've done historically.
Do you think though, I pulled a year out of my ass, but do you feel like after a year you'd be like, oh, I'm getting fulfillment, I just have skills to develop and I should continue, versus,
yeah,
wow,
I think for myself, and again, I would rate myself as somewhat slow learner. I started to feel like I was doing a decent job as a manager probably about 3 years in. And those first 2 years, I was definitely struggling and learning. But I feel like you're always. And then I started
reporting to you, and I tried to undo all that.
Yeah, that was kind of the nail in the coffin, where I was like, "That's it, I'm out." Like, I don't want to work with nobody anymore.
I think a good question to ask yourself too, or something to research in your decision, is understanding what does adding value look like to the company, because it's a very different mindset. Like, I think as an individual contributor, you're very used to having a lot of control, and you have a very like physical output to say, this is my value to hang my hat on. And I've experienced a little bit of this and had some conversations around it. Like, it's a big mind shift and a new mindset to have when your value add is like influencing others, or letting them have that like very physical success of a deliverable or something, or hands on keyboards. And so sometimes you can feel like, what am I doing? I was busy all day in meetings talking to people and things. And then you're like, I don't know what I have to quote unquote show for it. And so I think you have to be really honest with yourself of like, my expectations and value in this new role would be, this whole list of things, and not what I'm used to as an individual contributor. And that can be part of that pivot, I think, Michael, you're talking about. So maybe thinking through that early on would help you make the decision too, of would I be fulfilled by trying to add that value instead of the individual contributor role.
And the funny thing is, Julie, I have this a lot with people who are managers that are going for promotion because, like, as part of the promotion pack that we put together, you have to explain your achievements. And people are like, I don't want to take credit for my team's work. And you're like, I'm not telling you to take credit for your team's work. What I am saying is describe the project and your role, which might have been like identifying the resources, who in the team is going to work on it. It might have been getting the stakeholder buy-in. It might have been helping the team refine like next steps and that sort of thing. And like, your role, you did play a role in that project. You might not have been the technical lead. It's not taking credit for your team's work, but the way that you get comfortable with describing your value is understanding that those things you're adding now may look different to what they look like before, but it was still very important in helping the team deliver that project successfully.
Yeah. And sharing the story of their wins and being able to put the spotlight on them and pull out those best parts, you know?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I always say as a leader, your people's wins are your wins. All right, let's do one more before we wrap up. So this one came in. When I'm interviewing for an analytics position, what are some of the questions I should be asking the interview that will help me determine if the position is one that I should take if I get offered it? Oh, that's a really great question.
One question that I got asked during an interview, and it was for more of a leadership position in data, but I felt like it was such a solid question because the reality is when you get asked this as well, you're going to answer, well, I felt my intuition said to answer it honestly, which was, how are decisions made at this company? And when you think about it, it's a very open, broad question, but you can go in so many directions in answering it, right? But one is the company kind of data informed in their decision making. The other one is like, is there a particular specialty that leads decision making? So like it's our product managers or our engineers or our designers that like really drive decisions. Is it a founder-led company? And that's how decisions are made. Like you actually somehow kind of get the dirt on the company and like get a really good understanding of what you're going to have to navigate by asking that question. So that was one that I'm probably always going to ask now if I'm interviewing myself.
That's a really good one. I think that like throughout the interview process, like hopefully you've gotten a sense for the culture based on the different people that you're talking with or what the responsibilities of the job will be. So if that's all taken care of and you're solid there, I think making sure that two things that I've learned are very important to me is making sure that your manager is going to be there to be your support person / like shit umbrella taker for the stuff that comes down from above, right? So maybe you're going to ask some questions about when a difficult situation arises or when we're dealing with a budget cut, like how will we make sure that our most important projects are continue to stay resourced, or asking some little bit scenario based questions, because making sure that you are in lockstep with your manager, like you can put up with your +2 you're not really seeing eye to eye with or not getting along with. You can put up with some peers that aren't great, maybe even some direct reports that are a thorn in your side. But if your manager if you don't feel like they're going to be someone who's like in your corner advocating for what you need to be successful, it's going to all fall apart. You could be working at the most inspiring, amazing company that's aligned with your missions. And if that's broken, there's nothing that can repair that. And then I think the second thing too is if you sit down and write down a list of things that are really important to you in your role. One of the things that I learned doing that exercise most recently is it wasn't necessarily about the size of the team or...
Wait, hold on. Wait, how recent? Wait, is there something I need to know?
Cannot disclose. The last time I did this exercise, which was a couple of years ago, that previously it was all about what is the remit or what team would I be supporting or what type of company or what is the size of the company. And the last time I did the exercise, it was way more about, do I feel inspired by the work that I'm doing? Do I feel like my manager supports me, like the one I just touched upon? But again, making sure that you understand, like Mo said, how decisions are made. That's such a good one. I think how the work gets done, how are we going to build our budget together to make sure that the resources that I have, whether it's teams, technology, the support cross-functionally, it's just really digging into what's that going to feel like so that you're going in as eyes wide open as you can. Cause it really, the nuances of must have 6 years of experience in whatever, like throw that out the window. It's once you get there, it's really more about like, again, the value delivery and the relationships you can build to do cool shit. So I think that those are two things that I always probe on.
Is that second one a better one to try to get from the hiring manager, or if you've got someone who will be a peer to ask them, or is it
good point.
both? I mean, whoever seems like they're the straightest shooter.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Someone who's not feeding you the company line.
I would ask too, trying to understand like your support structure. So depending on the role you're going for, like if you're more middle of your career, let's say, and you still want to learn a lot while you're there and you want mentorship, or you really like collaborating with peers, I think asking questions about understanding the size of your team, who else is on the team, maybe people that have similar knowledge sets to you so you could learn from them, or trying to understand like, does your team partner with other teams in the organization? So then you kind of go in knowing like, are we really siloed and nobody talks to us and I'm really gonna have to create inroads, or are there things in place and relationships I can lean on to make me better and ready to go at this role? Like, I think for me, that's something that would be always top of mind to try to ask about.
I think, Julie, this is like both Julie and Val's points smushed together. But one of the things, like I do actually also have criteria that I rank, like that I've worked out are important to me in a role, and I rank them. And the last time I was job hunting, I had a few different opportunities and I was trying to figure out which one to take over a different one. And I basically scored the things that were important to me in like a matrix. And one of the things that was really important to me was people I could learn from. Now, I don't think that is necessarily something that you're going to be able to answer with a question, but sitting down before and knowing that was important to me, I walked out of one interview where they had asked me, they basically expected me to be able to rote learn R functions and describe them to them. And I was like, that's not me. When I use an R function, I'm going to look it up and understand how it works. That's where my level of R programming is. Another interview I was in, which was my Canva interview, I had 3 people. We were working through some R code, and one of the guys was like, have you ever used this function? And I was like, no, I haven't. He's like, let me show you how it works. And I walked out of the interview being like, oh, I learned 3 new things in R today. If that's what it's going to be like being in this team every day, that's the team I want to be in. So it's not always necessarily having the perfect question, but it is spending the time and giving thought to what's important to you and how you're going to assess that through an interview process.
Very smart.
I think first and foremost, you want to determine what the coffee situation is.
Oh, that is true.
If you don't have decent quality coffee provided by the company, do not work there.
But Michael, this is a remote position.
Oh, well, that's a little trickier. Remote, you have some benefits of being remote, blah, blah, blah. Anyways.
No, so, I still think it'd be a great question to ask.
I'm not sure you want to just observe that or just ask that. If you have an over lunch interview, that's a good time to bring up the coffee question. But you definitely should know. And I say it jokingly, but actually there's some seriousness behind that, which is little things like that will indicate level of investment. On a more serious topic, I would try to determine the disconnect between senior management and the analytics team that you're joining. And where is it? And so asking questions of the management team, what is the biggest challenge that you're facing? And then comparing that to what the analytics team tells you will tell you how much disconnect there is between management and analytics. And that's a really, really key thing for you to know going in. The other thing I would try to understand is to what extent is the analytics organization trusted and brought in? Because if there are other parts of the organization spinning up their own analytics and data, you're walking into a sea of bullshit that you want to avoid, to be honest. So it's sort of like, oh yeah, well the sales org kind of does their own thing over here because they don't trust any of our data. Red flag, red flag, red flag. And maybe as a leader, you're coming in to change that culture, but know what you're getting into. And if you're an individual contributor, know that that's going to pull against your ability to do your job in a meaningful way in an organization that's going to be splitting itself up and having internecine battles between different groups of different parts of the organization. So those are 2 parts that I would.
That's so good. And that last one, you should also be wary if it's like, oh, we have this centralized analytics team, but they never really give me what I want. So we have this role to just sit on our team. Like, That's the same red flag. It's just the other side.
Yep. You're getting hired to basically work against the organization, which has some benefits depending on how powerful the person is within the organization. But know you're walking into a war. And that means if you need a data warehouse setup or review setup, you may be going into enemy territory to work with the data engineering team to do those things. So it's all these things. But anyways, hopefully that's helpful.
Apply for a job right now.
Mr. Wilson.
I'm ready to go. I've never been more equipped.
I'm feeling fired up right now. Yeah, I'm gonna use these tips.
I knew that was going to be a really good one. I was excited about those answers.
This has been great. And again, a huge shout out and thank you to our listeners for bringing those questions to us through the listener survey. It's so great to hear from our listeners and get these questions. So really appreciate it. And thank all of you, Julie, Tim, Val, and Mo, for your expertise and taking the time to answer some of these.
And thank you, Michael.
Oh, well, I was waiting for that. That was what I was waiting for. Thank you.
Val read it right.
I feel like I threw the fishing rod out there and then just anyone.
Yeah, and also just a huge shout out to Ken.
Oh, Ken Riverside and the whole Fourth Floor production.
I mean, we'd be remiss if we didn't thank them. So.
Huge in the Chicago podcasting scene. All right. Listen, obviously, we also want to give a big thank you to Josh Crowhurst, our producer. He does so much behind the scenes to make the show possible. So thank you, Josh. You know, as I look back on sort of this topic and some of the questions we answered, you know, the career journey that we all face as analytics professionals is definitely complex, but I think there's more clarity now and more help now than there's ever been in this. And so hopefully you're feeling encouraged and hopeful about that. And we'd love to hear from you if you have more questions or more discussion. And there's great ways to do that. We've got a lot of presence on the Measure Slack chat group, as well as a LinkedIn page and our YouTube channel, which you go to YouTube and search for Analytics Power Hour. You can find that, and please subscribe. We just got that up and running with all of our old episodes recently. So you can find episodes there on YouTube as well as on your favorite podcasting platform. So I know I could speak for all of my co-hosts when I say, no matter what your role, no matter if you're a management or an individual contributor, wherever you're at in your career journey, keep analyzing.
Thanks for listening. Let's keep the conversation going with your comments, suggestions, and questions on Twitter at Analytics Hour, on the web at analyticshour.io, our LinkedIn group, and the Measure Chat Slack group. Music for the podcast by Josh Crowhurst.
So smart guys wanted to fit in, so they made up a term called analytics. Analytics don't work.
Do the analytics say go for it no matter who's going for it? So if you and I were on the field, the analytics say go for it. It's the stupidest, laziest, lamest thing I've ever heard for reasoning in competition.
This podcast studio is costing me money, so let's get the show recorded now.
Yeah, also, why are you in a podcast studio?
Okay.
Because his house is still on fire.
House, and I have no internet. I have no garage door openers. And yeah, my computer is half broken. My brand new microphone is dead.
Georgia's infrastructure, you know, they're still.
I have a feeling like my house is some sort of like electric Faraday cage kind of thing where it's like just hit me with lightning all the time. The wires.
Can you put some like giant trees next to the house?
I
and
do
maybe
have
they'll
giant
just like
trees. No, there's trees all around my house. And they hit my house.
In your ear.
And my ear. And your ear. My motherfucking ear. How's that for an outtake, Josh?
I never got confirmation from Tim on my eyes, so just crossed my fingers.
Oh.
Val and Julie, both of your eyes are better now, like after Tim gave you that feedback.
Yeah, I do it during internal meetings.
Good.
Yeah, me and my wonky eyes.
Facts and feelings and your eyes of 2/3.
Type A personality. Oh, I didn't even put any conditional formatting after you changed it to.
What?
Yeah, you slipping.
No conditional formatting?
You're slipping.
Did you manually color those?
Did you get hit by lightning?
One of us did. No, you know, people get Michael and me mixed up a lot. Who are listening?
I'm going to bring a bunch of eggshells and just scatter them around your feet so people have to walk on eggshells around you.
Rock flag and Mackenzie title.